Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. My name is Jamie Hinkle. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Learning and Inclusion Manager at pflagnation.al. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Something to Talk About Live. Just like every week, I am about to bring in Jean Marie Nevada, who is going to lead today's conversation. Hi, Jean.
Hinkle, we're together again.
We are. It's pretty amazing. And Jean Marie, did you know that Pride Month starts in less than 2 weeks?
I didn't, except for the fact that I got my Pride Month sneakers from Sperry. You knew I was going to get them on TV somehow.
That's wonderful. They're very cute.
Yeah, so Pride Month is right around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to be so busy, just like every June.
It's true. We're actually doing a show on what you and I actually do for a living, which is workplace engagement training. So I'm so excited about this.
I'm really excited to watch and so excited about our guests. So I'm going to let you take it from here, but I will be back if we have big questions at the end.
Thank you, Hinkle. Hey, everybody. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. I'm the Director of Learning and Inclusion at pflagnation.al. I use the pronouns she and her, or if you speak Spanish, ella. Every single week, we get together to talk about something related to LGBTQ equality. And this week, we are talking about the workplace, which is one of my very favorite topics in the whole world. So for those of you who are reading this week's article, we have a piece from Technically written by Holly Quinn called How to Ensure Your Workplace is LGBTQ Friendly. And you can find that article, as well as some questions if you'd like to do your own discussion at straightforequality.org/discussion series. So we want to talk about all things related to LGBTQ inclusion and where we work. And we have two incredible guests today, and I'm so excited about this. So first we have Deena Fidas, who's the Managing Director and Chief Program and Partnership Officer at Out and Equal, and Sabrina Kent, who is the Executive Vice President of Programs and External Affairs at the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, NGLCC. There we go. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be here and in wonderful company.
Yes, I think we're going to have a really good time because I always seek out my people who do the same thing as what we do. And it's so fun to actually get to talk about it and to hear different perspectives. So before we get into the conversation, I want to make sure that people know about your organization. So Sabrina, can you tell us a little bit about yours?
Yeah, thank you so much. Sabrina Kent, I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Executive Vice President of Programs and External Affairs at the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, otherwise known as NGLCC for short and affectionately, of course. And you might be asking yourself, what is an LGBT Chamber of Commerce? Great, glad you asked. We are the sole certifying body for businesses that are majority owned, operated, and controlled by an LGBTQ person or persons so that they can gain access to contracting opportunities, not only with one another and with other diverse businesses, but also with our corporate partners. We work with over 400 now Fortune 1000 corporations who are looking to diversify their own supply chains by working with LGBTQ owned businesses. We have 53 local affiliate chambers across the United States, over 26 now globally in over 30 countries, which is pretty exciting. So you can pretty much find LGBT Chamber of Commerce work all over the world at this point.
I'm just beyond impressed that you're able to memorize that many metrics in one fell swoop.
It's, we're coming on 8 years tomorrow. So if I don't have it down at this point, then that's probably a problem and I should reconsider my career objectives.
Well, Deena, tell us about what Out and Equal does.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jean Marie. And it's such a pleasure to be with both of you, longtime friends and colleagues in the movement. So Out and Equal is about 25 years old. It started as a scrappy program in San Francisco with the bold idea in the 90s of not forcing people to choose in the workplace between being out and being equal. And so since those early days, we've evolved to empower individual LGBTQ plus employees, their allies at every role in the organization, whether you're in human resources, you're the chief diversity officer, you're an individual contributor, an ERG leader, we work to educate and empower our people and also convene them. We're probably best known for our annual summit. It remains, I think, the world's largest LGBTQ plus workplace conference. And we have business advisory councils everywhere, quite literally from Sao Paulo to Bangalore to Shanghai. And we also work to ensure that our allies, meaning our institutional allies, businesses, are standing up for us. I know we're going to talk about that they are taking care of us in terms of being equitable to the LGBTQ plus community. And more broadly, we seek to create workplaces where everyone can thrive and belong.
Thank you. And if you have never been to the summit, you really should try going. It is an overwhelming experience. I always tell people my first year that I ever went, which was a long time ago, I have this memory of looking around and thinking, I have never seen so many out people at work in my whole life. And it was genuinely emotional. It's such important work. So let's talk about some of the interesting contradictions that we are seeing. So we're kind of at a very strange time for LGBTQ plus activism. There's an unprecedented amount of legislation being introduced out there. I think it's over 300 pieces just this year alone. Last year, we saw a significant number of them pass. And yet, at the same time, while this pulling back is happening in legislatures, we are seeing a lot of organizations invest more money in inclusion efforts, including around LGBTQ issues, than we ever have before. So, Deena, why is this happening? Is it economics? Is it a real shift in the way corporations do business and see corporate responsibility? Is it something else that I haven't even thought about at all?
So thanks so much, Jean Marie. And it is very true that we are in the middle of yet another springtime onslaught of anti-LGBTQ bills. I do want to quickly contextualize this trend, though, because it actually began the spring of 2015, which was the spring before what's called the Obergefell decision, in other words, marriage equality. And I think it's important to note this because as frankly demoralizing and frightening as these anti-LGBTQ efforts can be, in their own way, it's actually a sign of progress in the sense that just as we're about to cross another finish line or reach another inflection point, those who oppose LGBTQ equality ramp up. And so the damage is very real. I mean, you're looking at chilling effects on young people in schools, very real implications for young people and seeking gender-affirming healthcare coverage, care and coverage, chilling effect on what people can talk about in schools. So having said that this actually began in 2015, what's been incredible is the muscle of the business community has actually grown every year since. And of note, LGBTQ public policy is really the first body, if you will, of public policy that the corporate community had rallied around at the state level. So before we even talk about, are they going to weigh in on so-called bathroom bills or on religious exemption bills, the fact that the business community is investing in terms of their state house representation, their lobbyists to say, you know what, we're not interested in this. We want to look at these other issues. We want to look at, environmental issues. Put that bathroom bill away, leave our kids alone. That is extraordinary in and of itself. And so where the business community is now is they have risen to arguably being one of the most forceful, muscular champions for equality. And they are not doing this out of a sense that, TikTok Pride Month is coming, or even, shall we say, pinkwashing. They're doing it because people inside the organization, PFLAG moms, PFLAG parents, individuals who have a deep visceral investment in equality are speaking up and telling their stories. And they are telling the decision makers, or the decision makers themselves are saying, you know what? This isn't us weighing in on politics or on social issues. This is us weighing in on our people and their safety and well-being in their communities and the communities in which we operate. So I do not see the business community letting up on the gas here. And I think, while we will triumph, it is going to require a deep commitment and stamina on the part of the LGBTQ community and all of our allies, individual and institutional.
I so appreciate the context that you gave to that, because I think it is very easy to lose sight of the fact that the ferocity with which our opposition is coming at us is because of the progress that we have made. And I think kind of keeping that front of mind, it's hard to do, but it's necessary to do. And I think it also speaks to the power of the organizing inside of workplaces. So Sabrina, do you feel that some of the investments that big businesses have made in LGBTQ inclusion and equality, and including their advocacy efforts, are helping some of the smaller LGBTQ business owners succeed. How is it affecting that dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely. If that wasn't the case, then NGLCC wouldn't exist. When we think about our basic needs as individuals, it's putting food on the table and a roof over our heads, and we can't do that. Is there feedback, or is it just in my head?
You're coming in clear, but that feedback, maybe if you have anti-LGBTQ wavelengths coming in and you're just going to try and
I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. Jean Marie, I don't know what you did here, but you're really messing with me.
I broke something. I broke something, Sabrina. I told you it was coming.
Yeah, you did tell me to expect this, so I should have known. But when we think about being business owners, providing for ourselves, we can't do that if we don't have investments in our company. We can't do that if we don't have clients to provide our goods and services to. And corporate America is resoundingly stepping up, saying that we want to invest in these businesses. Not only do they know that it's the right thing to do, they know that it makes them stronger companies. It strengthens their bottom line. It helps them diversify thoughts and ideas, innovative products and services for their own supply chains, and for their own clients and customers. For our LGBTQ owned businesses, I think it's always important to contextualize. We think of a small business as being a ma and ma or a pa and pa shop right on Main Street. And those are definitely exist. They are the vibrant fabric of our economy here in the US. But the other side of it is LGBTQ owned businesses span every single industry, every single commodity group, from AI and robotics to construction and related services. Yes, we have our bakers and our florists, and they're fabulous and amazing. But part of what we do at NGLCC is dispel the myth that we're gay all day, right? And having companies invest in LGBTQ owned businesses, I think, also really helps shift the narrative, similar to what Deena does at Out and Equal, shift the narrative from what we are doing in our 5 to 9 as LGBTQ people and what we are actually providing in our 9 to 5. So on the baseline, to answer your question, I would say absolutely yes. The investment from corporations and LGBTQ owned businesses allows our businesses to thrive, allows us to support our families, our communities, hire more diverse talent, and also affect legislation and policy in a way that is inclusive for our communities.
It's really interesting, Sabrina, as I talk to different organizations, as we're working with them more and more, when we sort of get to know people and they tell us what they've actually been doing, I'm hearing more and more people actually say to us, and we have a lot of suppliers who are from the LGBTQ community, and they are finding them through NGLCC. So I think it's becoming something that people are so conscious of, that it's not about just the training. It's not about just what you're doing in June, but it is about this year-round investment and how can we create these partnerships. So kind of keeping on the path of some of the negative stuff that is happening out there, let's look at something like the Stop Woke Act in Florida, which we're all going to have to just take a second and breathe deeply. Among the other things that this piece of legislation, which has become law, actually does, it gives employees the right to sue their employers if they find a diversity training that they have had to attend to be offensive to them. It has been actually one of the first successful attempts so far to actually legislate control over how inclusion is being handled in workplaces. Certainly there have been some directives, but this is the real first piece of legislation that we are actually seeing. So Deena, where do you think legislation like this is headed? Do you think we're going to see more attempts to do things like this? Less? Where is this going? Because that was kind of a different twist. While we were looking at a lot of stuff happening in schools, this was the first real workplace one that we saw.
Yeah, here's how I'll say it. I think that we will continue to see misguided attempts to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And bills like this are so absurd because you know what? This train has left the station. 9 in 10 Fortune 500 companies have sexual orientation and gender identity protections, and they do training on that because that is central to their business operations. It is not 1992 or even 2002 where you could pluck the couple of leaders that are inclusive. You could pluck a couple of leaders. If you wanted to boycott, for example, telecommunications or IT companies that are inclusive, you would be left with chalk on the sidewalk. And you might not even be able to find the chalk because guess what? Again, it's hard to even say they're industry leaders. I mean, this is so embedded in business operations. As Sabrina said, it's not a nice to have. It is completely embedded. We are also at a place where, certainly the Equality Act, which would finally extend consistent federal protection to our community, that is not a dream realized yet. However, because of the Bostock decision, we do have protections in employment, and employers are vested in ensuring that there's a shared understanding of expectations in the workplace about how people are treated. And so certainly using, kind of radioactive language or hot potato language, however you want to describe red meat language, I should say. Clearly I'm thinking about dinner or something, but like stop woke. Well, that's just silliness because what that is speaking to is, stop innovative learning sessions that are helping our business, stop our business from being ahead of the curve when it comes to recruiting and retaining talent. And, I think by and large, when you see these bills introduced and you see those that support them, it's worth noting that this is not typically representative of the most current entry-level generation in the workplace, and certainly not the next generation in the workplace. This is the refuge right now of folks who I think feel that they are losing control of a narrative and are fearing power sharing. And so, yes, unfortunately, I think we're going to still see spaghetti sort of thrown at the wall, but I think it will be an unfortunate blip on the trajectory here and not precedent setting.
Well, that actually is good news. Also, now I'm incredibly hungry because we started
spaghetti,
with
right? Hot potatoes. I mean,
We've gone to every single sector of food at this point. So, Sabrina, this legislation is not limited to Florida. We have certainly seen it popping up in other places. We know that what happened in Florida became a template for other states when it came to particularly school legislation. So it's likely to pop up with the workplace too. So how has the mass introduction and even the occasional passage of some of this very anti-LGBTQ legislation affected LGBTQ-led businesses? What are you hearing from your members and your constituents about what's happening out there?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm glad that you asked it. I think generally as a community, to what Deena alluded to, it sparks fear, right? What could happen to me because I live in Texas? Or I was sharing earlier, I'm from Florida. How does it feel for me to go home to be in Florida? Or aging LGBTQ folks and couples trying to figure out estate planning and family planning, and what is that going to look like for them in the area that they live in? From a business perspective, right, this gives people a license to discriminate in a lot of respects. And so I'm sure in some cases in Main Street America or on Main Street America, there are LGBTQ owned businesses that don't want to be so out and proud about who they are. Thankfully, again, going back to the resounding support from corporate America, our companies that we work with at NGLCC are not going to take away any kind of contract because somebody is LGBTQ. And our businesses know that. We foster those connections. But on the same side of things, in over half of the states in this country, you can be discriminated against in lending for being LGBTQ. Access to capital is huge for business owners. So obviously that's at the forefront of our mind. Another reason why we need the Equality Act. I think it's a really uncertain time, and going back to pre-2015 era, it kind of feels like, okay, let me think about which county I'm in, which state I'm in, and what does this look like for me as an LGBTQ person navigating along these lines? And on the federal level, there still isn't federal recognition for LGBTQ owned businesses in contracting. On the government level, we're now, I think, in over 30 cities and states across the country that do recognize LGBTQ owned businesses in contracting, but there is not also that resounding federal outcry right now to say we support these businesses, they're not going to be discriminated against in our supply chain. So if I'm an LGBTQ DoD contractor, I'm probably not going to be scribbling that at the top of my lungs in my contract for fear that when the administration, when or if the administration changes, that my situation could look very differently for me and my company.
Yeah, it's a little scary to think about having to still navigate so many of those barriers that are up that I think a lot of people don't even realize. I think, when we start talking, when we're teaching in workplaces and we say to people in half the states, roughly, there are no protections for people, there is still this moment of, I actually don't believe you. And that is a huge issue that we have. And I think that actually speaks to why the work of all of our organizations becomes so important, because there are these outrageously wrong things happening. And somebody has got to keep raising them and saying, really seriously, like, look at the map and let me walk you through this. So on a good note, we are always looking at different emerging issues, who is being talked about, who is being included, how we are navigating different identities. I mean, a decade ago, I know a lot of people were just sort of getting to talking about the inclusion of folks who are transgender. Now we're talking at work about non-binary and ace and aro identities. It's constantly changing. So Sabrina, I'm interested to know from the constituents that you are working with, are you starting to see more businesses that are being started by people who are part of the plus, as we do our LGBTQ plus in the community? And what kind of things are you hearing from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I hear a lot from folks maybe outside of the community or even folks within our own community that say, what does this mean? Why do we have these new identities popping up out of nowhere? And the thing is we're human beings. And when we have language to describe our experience, we're going to start ascribing to that language to define who we are, help present who we are to the world. So for us, it's really important, especially when we're looking at the context of LGBT business inclusion, to make sure that folks feel like they can identify as who they truly are in the process of certifying. I think the most important thing to say here is I think we all have to approach each other with respect in terms of one another's identities. We have to understand that people ascribe to different language to describe their own experiences. That does not mean that we're alienating any other people in our movement, but actually, I think being more inclusive. And I also think it's important to say we just can't paint in broad strokes. So that's why we have our transgender and gender expansive initiative at NGLCC, because we know that TGX issues look very different than LGB and sometimes Q issues look. And there are going to be very specific needs that TGX business owners have that maybe other folks in the community may not have. And we need to be able to provide those resources accordingly. So yeah, I think as we continue to evolve as human beings, as language continues to evolve, we're going to see folks start to identify differently. And it's about making space in the movement for that. I mean, we've talked about this before. NGLCC's acronym is NGLCC. We were founded as the Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. We rebranded several years ago to the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. We'll be rebranding again to be more inclusive as identities continue to evolve, because that's what we need to do. Otherwise, we're not actually serving the stakeholders that we claim to be serving.
Yeah, certainly PFLAG is one of those organizations. We were founded one way, but have been inclusive our entire existence. And so communicating that is so important. I find it really fascinating having conversations with people inside of our community who kind of get frustrated and are like, where are all these identities coming from? I'm like, they've always been here. And the reason we're having challenges has nothing to do with the fact we're talking about this. So Deena, how are larger organizations responding as we have more expansive conversations? I mean, just looking at what kind of sessions appear at the summit, for example, really speaks to how different these conversations are. So what are you seeing in this space?
Yeah, so actually what I'm seeing is very heartening. In the last 18 months, with so much going on in the world, with so much stress in the system, the number one request, I would say broadly in terms of topics that we've been getting from our global partners, is actually around non-binary inclusion. And, we have an extraordinary leader on staff, CV Viverito, who is really a global leader in their own right. And they are trilingual and have some roots in Brazil and in Spanish-speaking Latin America. And CV, for example, is part of an emerging global cohort of non-binary leaders who are really unpacking how language does a disservice, not just to non-binary people, but to so many people. And, in the last year, we've released a number of resources. You can check it on our website in Portuguese, in Spanish, in English, certainly, and targeted at different local cultural contexts about non-binary inclusion. And, you know, it's rather extraordinary that, you know, I think many of us remember a couple of years ago, Merriam-Webster's word of the year was they, them, as in the pronoun they, them. And really, I think, and I so appreciate every time I get to hear Sabrina speak, the emphasis there on this is part of the spectrum of the human experience. And I think that sometimes I think other movements or other folks, not necessarily in the community, kind of marvel at what to them feels like rapid progress of the LGBTQ movement. Now, let's bracket the fact that we don't even have basic federal protections, but noted in terms of sort of social progress, right? But what I think engenders so much support and allyship, if I may tout our you know, toot our horn headed into Pride Month, is that we do give vocabulary to the nuances of our identities. We do give vocabulary to this. And a lot of the coming out process is laying claims to who you are in the world and to your happiness. And that conceptually, I think, just resonates with people. And so I have been deeply heartened by the commitment from so many partners to get this right. And by getting it right, it doesn't mean perfection or one way of doing it. I mean, we're getting calls from very sophisticated companies saying, okay, so legally we have to have IDs checked, but you know, this person presents one way on Monday and their gender expression is fluid. How do we get this right? How do we accommodate for this in a way that meets all of our needs? So it's that has been really heartening and incredible. And I should also say that this is an identity that I think is often talked about as certainly like a more youthful identity, but I think we've also done a good job of demonstrating, like, again, non-binary folks have always been there, but the level of recognition is certainly at the highest level in sort of recent history.
I so agree with both of you, and I actually could not possibly smile more about this conversation, because we've had the same experience that we keep picking up emails and picking up the phone, and it's somebody who says to us, could you talk to us about pronouns? And the thing that excites me the most about it is the fact that we then say, listen, this isn't just a conversation about pronouns. This is so much of a bigger conversation, and people start diving in to conversations that maybe they either thought they were done with or thought that they understood, and we get to open up again and take it in a completely different direction. And that's exciting. And I can just say personally, the influence of so many of the people in the non-binary space and the more expansive space has given us language to describe all kinds of experiences. And I find myself having these moments where I think, if only I had this language 10, 15, 20 years ago, what a different experience I would have had too. And I'm so grateful for this. I know some people are challenged by change, but I think it is the most exciting thing. And in the space of so much negativity, it is just the best thing in the world. So I think we have about 4-ish minutes left. 3 minutes. I'm a philosophy major. I can't do math to save my life. Pride Month is coming. Jamie started with that. Beyond body painting yourself rainbow, which is an option, but it's really bad for your skin. We probably need to consider some of the things that advocates should be doing as the world turns bright rainbow for a month. Like, we know that on June 1st, everyone's logo is going to have a rainbow flag on it. And then July 1st, it'll go back to normal. So I would love to hear from both of you. What should people be doing as we enter Pride Month? Everybody is suddenly queer friendly. What questions should they be asking before they spend their money with all of these rainbow clad organizations? And Sabrina, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think boycotting companies, big companies who use rainbow flags, is a good idea, because a lot of these companies are doing really, really great work for our communities. A great place to look, I'm sure Deena's going to share this as well, is the Corporate Equality Index. You can actually find out what companies are doing on a day-to-day basis to support LGBTQ consumers, to stand up against anti-LGBTQ legislation, to support their LGBTQ employees, their allied employees, and so much more. So one, take a look at what these companies are actually doing in the day-to-day. But two, if you can buy from an LGBTQ-owned small business, you absolutely should. You should take a look at your local LGBTQ affiliate chamber of commerce. You can go to our website. I think it's literally on the banner right now at the bottom of this screen. Hit affiliate chambers and you can see what kind of LGBTQ and allied businesses there are in your area to support you during Pride Month. And please, please, if you're buying Pride swag, get an LGBT supplier to provide it for you.
Yes. Deena, what should people be doing?
So number one, ask the company if they're a PFLAG supporter, because we're all indebted to PFLAG. And truly, thank you for the incredible, incredible work that you all do every single day. Second, I'm going to say, don't just urge the companies to do certain things. Thank the companies that have pushed the envelope. Look at the companies who tried to buffer against anti-trans bills this year. Look at and send them a thank you note to their customer service line, because they don't get enough of those. And third, I would say, as long as it is safe for you, if you're an employee in these companies, take this as an opportunity to tell your story as an ally, to tell your story as someone who's trans, as someone who's bi, pan, LGBTQ plus, whatever your identity or relationship to this movement, tell your story, because that is really how we have seen change move forward.
Thank you. And the check is in the mail for the plug for PFLAG. Thank you. Sabrina, Deena, thank you so much. I am so excited to have you here and so proud to get to do this work alongside both of you. Please, we will have to do this again sometime soon once we all survive June. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we have to wrap up. Once again, it is the end of another show. I'm, of course, running over time. Just a quick reminder, if you want to lead with love, you got to read with love. So make sure you are checking out pflag.org, Read with Love, to find out all about our Read with Love bookshelf and how you can help put back some of those banned books on library shelves. We will be back next week with another great conversation. Happy pre-Pride month as we get a little bit closer. And as we wrap up the same way every single week, please run fast, laugh hard, and most of all, be kind. If you need help, visit us at pflag.org. Otherwise, we will see you next week on Something to Talk About Live. Bye, everybody.